Hello and welcome to Held in Our Hearts Baby Loss Podcast. We are an Edinburgh-based charity providing baby loss counselling and support for bereaved families. We are committed to ensuring that no family has to face their journey of loss alone, and we wanted to create this podcast to reach out and share stories, encouraging greater connection and understanding. Join us on our journey as we speak to a wide variety of guest speakers who have been personally affected by baby loss or who have been moved by it.
Hello and welcome to our Held in Our Hearts podcast. Today we are talking to Fraser Baxter and Richard Skipworth, both bereaved dads. Richard Skipworth lost his son Alex and Fraser Baxter lost his daughter Jenna. And in this podcast we will hear them talk about their love for their children and the challenges that they took part in to raise awareness for Held in Our Hearts. We'll talk about their journey of grief and how their unwavering support for the charity kept them going through the challenges. They will also talk about their funny stories and how, when they were out training for these incredibly arduous challenges, how they managed to keep going when it didn't seem possible. We will listen to them today and we will share not only parts of their grief, but we will share their happiness in talking about their precious children. We hope you enjoy.
So, here we are with Fraser Baxter and Richard Skipworth, also known as Skip. So, before we start, we'd like to know a little bit about you guys. Who are the real Fraser Baxter and Richard Skipworth? Fraser, let's start with you. You want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi everybody, I'm Fraser, I'm 41, married, have 3 kids, Jessica who's 8, Isabel who's 3, and I guess why I'm here, my other daughter Jenna who passed away 5 years ago. I'm a chartered surveyor, as I say, stay in Bathgate.
Amazing, thank you so much, Fraser. And Richard, or as we will affectionately refer to you through the whole podcast, as Skip. How are you doing?
Yeah, so hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Skip. So I'm 39, turning 40 this month as well. So I'm joining the 40 club as well. I'm a father of 3 as well. My eldest is Robin, and Alex, who we'll be talking about today, and my most recent addition to the family, Brody. I'm a training specialist to work at the power station, and I just really love cycling. So one of the reasons I'll be talking to you today.
Oh, that's amazing. It's so lovely to meet you guys. And as you know, I'm Tracy and I've met both of you and I feel incredibly privileged to know about Jenna and also to know about Alex as well. Now, we're here today to talk about the incredible challenges that you guys have done in memory of your son and your daughter. And I'm just so privileged to hear so much about them. So, Fraser, do you want to tell us a bit about the challenges that you've taken part in memory of Jenna?
Sure. So I guess the very first one I done was the Edinburgh Half Marathon 5 years ago. And then from then, it's really just progressed. So I've built up to doing 3 marathons. So that's Edinburgh twice and then the Loch Ness Marathon. And then I kind of had an idea of doing what I called was the Journey for Jenna, which was running 22 miles back from the Royal Infirmary back to my home in Bathgate, of the journey home basically. So we've done that twice. And then just recently I done an ultramarathon in Edinburgh, which was 34 miles. So that's my biggest challenge yet. And I've done loads of half marathons and loads of 10Ks.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. You know, I love the way you say that. You know, your journey for Jenna and being part of that, I know was incredibly special too. And an ultramarathon, that's phenomenal. That's so
Yeah,
good.
I guess they're great. The training's probably the bigger challenge than the race itself. I guess we'll just get into talking about the challenges later on, but I feel like that the training's the hard part. The race is the easy bit. It's the enjoyable part.
Yeah, so. And Skip, the challenges that you've taken part in?
Yeah, so my first challenge I took on 3 years ago now. Yeah, 2019 June. I suppose I should say first of all the first big challenge was from my wife. She went and cycled from the Borders General Hospital over to Glasgow Children's Hospital, where Alex was born and sadly died over in Glasgow. So only 4 months after Alex had died, she went and did that cycle from all the way from the Borders to Glasgow in over 2 days. And I suppose the gauntlet was set then, and it was over to me, my turn to do something in his memory. And I've been doing quite a bit of cycling for a number of years and done a few events and things, but I really wanted to challenge myself, and I fancied riding the North Coast 500, which is a loop starting from Inverness. You can go clockwise right around the north coast of Scotland, and it's super hilly, super scenic, and yeah, it's something I'd wanted to do for ages. And I decided that was something that would be brilliant to remember Alex by, and it was coincidence with the number of miles. It's 516 miles in total, and Alex lived for a total of 516 days. 516 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just one of those little coincidences. So it was, yeah, definitely the thing that I wanted to do to remember him. And then after I completed that, I really wanted to challenge myself further. I gave myself a year off because I was knackered after that. Lockdown came, and I wanted to get back on my bike and really challenge myself again. And there's this challenge that nutters do now on their bikes called Everesting, and it's basically just finding a hill climb somewhere and doing repeats up and down it until you've done the equivalent height of Everest. And the fitness level I was at when lockdown started in 2020 was far off from me being able to complete that, and it took me a whole 12 months. So I set myself a goal to do that in June 2021. And yeah, as Fraser's already sort of mentioned, the training's the hard bit, and I'd say probably the last 10 hours of that as well was also the hard bit, because I really did push myself beyond my limit. But yeah, those are the two big challenges I've done, and they're only going to get bigger, I think.
And that's the thing for both of you, listening to the challenges that both of you have taken part in memory of your son and your daughter. They're not light challenges. They're huge challenges that you've both incredibly done. And the thing that strikes me as well is it's not just that you've done one challenge, you've both continued these challenges on in memory. And I think the question that I'd really want to ask both of you is, you've done this one huge challenge, and you look back on it, you're tired, you're exhausted, and you look back on that challenge, and it's such a sense of achievement for what you've both done. I'm exhausted listening to those challenges, but what I would want to ask is, what makes you, why continue? Why do you've done this one challenge in memory of your son and your daughter. Why continue on and do another one? What makes you keep going?
So I think I split my kind of timeline from when Jenna was born and died to now. And I kind of split that into two. So in the beginning, and I say it's very much training focused for me. So in the beginning, the training was a way to escape the sort of grief and the sadness within the house, and allowed me to sort of process my thoughts, and then certainly obviously raising awareness of the charity and baby loss. So then I ended up coming to a point where I couldn't outrun my grief anymore. So I've sought counselling through the charity, and I've got myself in a better place. So now what keeps me going is the connection that running has given me to Jenna, and wearing her name on the charity's vest. That keeps me going, raising awareness now. So as I say, I kind of split it into two sort of phases of my grief.
Yeah, I identify with that as well, Fraser. Very much. For the first couple of years, I really went out hard, buried myself in cycling and just pushing myself to my limits. And I think the two challenges I've done were very different. The first one, I wasn't in a good place. I'd pushed myself too far, and I was in quite a low place leading into doing the 516 North Coast 500. And after that, I'd burnt out, and it took me a good wee while to pick up and want to get back on the bike again. And it was for that reason. It wasn't to escape the grief anymore. It was to sort of be with Alex. I put my thoughts with him when I was on the bike, and it's a chance to, well, I call it my Alex time, really, because I'm a busy dad now. I've got two other kids to take up all my time when I'm not on the bike. So being out on the bike, the training, although sometimes I push myself really hard, I'm still there thinking about Alex and having a wee chat with him sometimes. And I went into the Everesting Challenge last year in a very different mood, and I was cycling with Alex at that point.
And the thing is, as we know, I think, I'm a bereaved mum, but we know that, dads grieve equally, but they also grieve very differently. And I think that's lovely what you've both said, that the time that you went out was at the beginning, that grief was very different at the beginning. You either tried to outrun or outcycle your grief, which is a huge challenge on its own. And you were parenting as well. You were parenting for Jenna, and you were parenting for Alex, and you were spending that time with your baby, which is lovely.
Yeah, I don't know if there's also maybe a relationship with doing these events as pain and suffering that you have to go through to do these events, whereas I really have struggled to know how to vent my grief. And I just wonder subconsciously if that's maybe a reason why I do these hard challenges, is to endure the pain and suffering.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an aspect of it, isn't it? I hurt and at the time, and then afterwards you get that high, and it sort of, you've pushed all that grief out for a little while, and you feel a little bit better for it. And
and the thing is, as we know, when we're out on these challenges, there's not a lot else you can do. You're spending that time, but you're also spending that time thinking as well about your baby. And it's not like you want anybody else to be able to reach it at that point. Would you agree? You want to be alone in your thinking.
Yeah. Sorry, Fraser.
I was going to say as well, when you start to do these bigger challenges, the people that you can call on to train with get smaller and smaller. So, by default, you are forced to go out on your own.
Yeah. I like being out on my own, I must admit. I mean, I've got some close friends who come on the challenges or help me in my training, and stave off some of the boredom on the longer rides that I have to do. But I just enjoy being out on the bike alone in my thoughts most of the time, and it's it's great. Just wind in your hair, not really thinking about much, but just letting your thoughts drift on. And I, like I said, I do sometimes have bit of a chat with Alex and just tell him how I'm feeling at the moment, and yeah, share the scenery with him, tell him what's happening around me and things.
And as dads as well, you've got that precious relationship with your children that, as you're right, it's being able to go out there and have that chat with your baby, that the distance, regardless of the distance that you're doing, you're having that chat and having that parenting time as well. And you're right, Fraser, when you say it's the amount of people that you can call on gets smaller and smaller with the big challenges. So you are alone a lot of the time, and sometimes it is nice to be able to say, right, you know what, this is the bit that I'm here and I'm thinking about what I've been through, but also about what I'm coming through, because as we know, grief is a lifelong journey. I was also going to ask you guys as well, is what would you say then, in the challenges that you've taken part, talking about the high points, the real high points, what would you say would be the real high points for you in the challenges that you've done? Because as we're saying, they're not easy challenges.
No. I think the big thing is always finishing. the bit when you cross the finish line, that feeling, you do get overcome by emotion. That's a really good high. And I think also the first, because you're relatively new at running and stuff, there's always these events that you're ticking off as a first time. So doing something for the first time. But on a kind of personal note, doing Journey for Jenna for the first time, getting that in the newspaper and a wee bit of publicity, and then also being, I don't know if you remember, Tracy, I was the ambassador for the men's 10K in Edinburgh, so that was a wee bit more publicity and sort of promoting men's mental health and men's grief.
I think, Fraser, though, don't you remember, a high point for me was the cherry picker when we were running the Journey for Jenna. Yes.
In the Walker Road, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, for me, one of the really key moments I remember on my first, I should have said, I sort of, a bit like you, Fraser, I've got a sort of a hashtag it's Cycle for Alex, so I ride under. So my first Cycle for Alex, cycling around the North Coast, the last day, I did it over 5 days, and I was absolutely shattered on the last day. My Achilles heels were inflamed. I was just in agony. But just outside of Inverness, lots of my family had gathered, and I saw my daughter for the first time. I'd hunted her for 4 days, and I was just overwhelmed at that moment. I knew that I was just about to arrive and complete that first challenge, and it just the emotions flooded in. Absolutely love that moment. I'll always remember that, seeing her again. But I've been away for 4 days, and that was my 5th day. I've been away for the 4 days with Alex, and I was now returning to the family again. I'm thinking of the crossing the finish line thing. It was very different on the Everesting. I'd been on the bike for 19 hours when I finally crossed that finish line, and there wasn't elation. I was just absolutely shattered. I just wanted off the bike and into the car and away home. And I think my friend Tim, who supported us, he kept passing us bottles as I was flying past him every lap. He asked me what was the highlight of it, and I said, ask me again in a week, because at the moment I'm just too tired to think about it. And since then, the highlights are just knowing that I could do that sort of distance, because it was 275 kilometers, and half of that going uphill. And I'm quite a tall lad. I'm not a climber naturally, so it was a slow old grind for those 19 hours, and I think I enjoyed it.
I think as well, you're right. It's the highlights. When you look back, when you're saying, Fraser, about crossing the finish line, and for you, Skip, saying there about seeing your loved ones at the finish line. It is that you know why you're doing it, but to be able to see them there just to give them the biggest hug ever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a great feeling. Makes you want to do it again.
Yeah.
Fancy taking up cycling, Fraser, and coming on a big one with me sometime.
I'm quite clumsy on a bike.
Fair enough. I'm not a great runner. I did run a marathon a while back, but I didn't enjoy it. Cycling's my thing.
Oh, at least you can get a wee rest on cycling, no eh?
Aye, yeah, occasionally.
And the other thing is as well, when you're saying there about, you both have very, very different interests. You both are, for you, Skip, it is cycling, for you, Fraser, it is running. But I think the common goal that brings us together is that finish line, is that part where you get through the finish line and you actually think, wow, I've done it, and why we've done it. What would we're chatting there about the high points and how the high points are the ones that you look back on and you smile at. What would you say then would be the low points to take, first of all, taking part in such a big challenge, and also about how it feels with those low points within it, a huge undertaking of the challenges that you've done?
I think the training, the training's probably, in the same respect as grief. It's not linear, it's up and down all the time. And there's been certain points that I've completely lost my mojo with running. I've had to call my wife Shelley to come and pick me up, and random roads I've had to Google to come and get me, because you just physically can't move anymore. You're just exhausted. And again, training can be quite relentless. So, that's inevitable. That's going to happen. And same with grief. Grief can be quite relentless as well. So I think they two things kind of, marry each other quite well. But just trying to keep going is sometimes is the hardest part. But then the way I look at it is, the pain that you have in these events in training, that's short-term pain. That's over in an hour, a couple of hours maximum. The pain that you have as a bereaved dad, that's a different pain. That goes on, for your full life.
Yeah, I remember writing a little thing in my blog a couple of weeks out from doing my Everesting, and I said a year ago I just didn't think I could do this challenge, but now 2 weeks out, I've been through all the training, and yeah, it is the training is it's a bit like a metaphor for grief. It's you have your ups and your downs, and you tell yourself sometimes you can't do this anymore, and then suddenly you're through that bit and you're going strong again. But yeah, the overwhelming thing was I'd got through at the time 3 years without Alex physically in my life, but he was there still in my life and my mind, and I'd managed to get myself to that point, and I knew that doing these really hard challenges is nothing in comparison to the suffering you go through as a bereaved parent. And that's your strength at the end of the day. It's also the massive downer. You've lost your child, and but it gives you that inner strength to know that you can do these challenges.
Absolutely. And what you're saying there about you're out there, for both of you, you're both out there doing these incredibly massive challenges, and it is all about how you're going to get through these challenges. And you're right, it is linear with grief, because we've, as bereaved parents, it's, we're out there training, and we know it's not the worst thing we've been through, because the worst thing we've been through is we've lost our babies. But we have to keep going, because we've just signed up for a challenge, and you want to see that challenge out regardless of how tough it's going to be. And you're right, the low points, and what you're saying there, Fraser, about phoning Shelley just to get you through it or pick you up. And it feels so difficult, but you know you're going to do it. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's tough. And what would you say then for both of you in these huge challenges that you've done? Is there anything you've particularly learned about yourself, either in a good way or a bad way, when you were out doing these challenges?
I think the big thing is resilience. From obviously sticking to a training plan, doing the training, and on top of the grief that you're dealing with, certainly in the early part of my sort of stages of grief, being resilient, I think is a big thing. No matter what happens in life, you still keep going. You've got your kids to look after, you've got to earn money, so you just have to keep going.
That's so true.
You don't really have the choice with all that side in your life, and I've realised that I am stronger, and I'm more capable than I thought I was beforehand. I mean, I've always pushed myself, but never really recognised it before. But now I'm out there doing these things, and people are saying, "Wow, that was big," and I'm like, actually, yeah, that was a big deal, and I didn't realise that actually I am capable of doing these sort of things, and yeah, it's got that, it's built that inner strength and that almost that confidence in me to keep myself going, and knowing that, I mean, you have those days, don't you, where you just could quite easily hide away from the world, but you realize you can't, and then you find that strength to get out there and do what you need to do, and you put your face on, and doing all this training and these challenges, the training for these events also train you to cope with the grief and learn to live with the grief, and keep living.
Multitasking as well.
Oh yeah. Recently had my 18-month-old Brody come in, and when I was in quite a sweaty state on my bike and on my turbo trainer in my pain cave, and he ended up sitting on my knee while I was cooling down. He had to come in the shower with me afterwards.
I love it. Absolutely. I love that. The fact that you're right. You say these big challenges come along, we sign up to them, we do them, and we do them again. But we also have that real life as well, and that resilience to be able to work around the challenges. And I think, what you were both saying there about grief really resonated. The fact that with grief, your grief still carries on regardless of what's happening in life. The shopping still needs to be done, the mortgage still needs to be paid, but we're also still grieving, and you're grieving as bereaved dads. So life still carries on round about that grief. I thought that was really interesting the way you put that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So would you say then, thinking about the big challenges, and I know myself from taking part in different things, when you're out training, and there was a question that when I wrote it down, it did spring things to memory, that, when you've been out doing these challenges, is there any funny stories that you would like to share of things that have happened, or, wee things that maybe someone said to you when you've been out doing these incredible challenges that you would like to share with our listeners today?
Right, so when me and my mates signed up to do the Edinburgh Half Marathon, this was our first big run in 2017, and I remember reading something that said, on race day, don't change anything that you do in training. So wear the same shorts, wear the same t-shirt, same trainers and stuff. The problem was that I think the weather was incredibly bad that year, and we'd all been running in running tights from about February through to April. So we turn up on the day of the Edinburgh Half Marathon, and it's like 25, 30 degrees, and we're all there in our long sleeve tops and our running tights, and everybody's there in their shorts and vest. And luckily we didn't take our gloves, so
Oh, Fraser, that's
Keep
brilliant.
with the methodology. That's great.
Was it a little bit warm?
Oh, it was absolutely scorching. I must have been close to 30 degrees, I think.
And you still wore your tights?
Yeah, all of them. I think all 6 of us. Yeah, I'm sure if you look back on the photos, you see us all wearing the running tights.
That's brilliant.
I was racking my brain to think of something genuinely funny that's happened to me on my training or during the events, and just you saying that, I've sort of the reverse happened to me on the Everesting. I'd got my kit that I was going to wear, and just as I was descending to the bottom of the first climb, the heavens opened and I got absolutely drenched. So I'm there in my summer, just my t-shirt and my bib shorts, and I was absolutely drenched. And that's me. I'm doing it. I'm set off, and I sort of warmed up on the way up, and then on the way down again, I got colder. And then after 3 laps, I realised I wasn't going to get any warmer, and I had to physically stand there. I couldn't get my gloves on, and my mate Tim was just there, just helping me actually get dressed, actually put some layers on so I could actually move again, because I could barely feel my limbs anymore. So funny in a way, I think, but also quite worrying. I think early signs of hypothermia at that point.
And you're right. It's when you look back now and you see yourself standing at that point, like you, Fraser, you're saying there. You see the race happening, and you just know that it's going to be so warm. And for you, Skip, you're just thinking, I would never envisioned I'd have to have a friend dress me ever in my life.
Yeah, luckily you didn't have to put my bib shorts on for me. That would have been a new level of friendship.
Yeah, you're right. It is that whole other new level of friendship, isn't it? And for both of you, we were chatting there earlier about having people who have been out and joined you on these incredible challenges that you've both done. And it's conversations as well, isn't it? It's conversations that you have with people who you're out running with or cycling with. You think, wow, how nice it was to share those conversations with them. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Tim, who I just mentioned, he came on the whole of the North Coast 500 with me, and kept my spirits up, and I think I kept his spirits up as well. We worked off each other, and my dad joined me on certain stretches of it. He's in his 70s, and he's got his e-bike, and he joined us for quite a long stretches at times, and yeah, that was nice. And obviously I did the Everesting by myself, but with support from Tim. He came along and fed me and kept my spirits high. And, it's just nice to have these people in your life that you can talk to, and you can share your experiences with them. You open up a bit more, I suppose, when you're exercising, I think.
I think as well, I think quite often I've heard a few expressions of what's chatted about on a train and run stays on a train and run, and I'm sure you guys will agree with me on that point, that you go out on a run and you have that rant and rave sometimes, and you're sharing it with somebody who's very close to you, but you know that conversation is very special as well, is safe. And it's almost like, we're chatting there about being our grief, that we share our grief with certain people, who will have conversations with certain people, and we know that it's a safe space to talk.
Yeah, I think now as well, though, we've been involved in the charity for 5 years now. I've built up a relationship and friendship with a lot of the other guys that do the running. So, that's really good. And, I think one of the highlights of the year is going to the Great North Run with everybody, getting on the train. So that they've built a lot of camaraderie with fellow runners and fellow members of the charity, which I think is really special. I mean, everybody's got that connection, that bond that nobody wanted to have in the first place. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a family, isn't it? People understand what you could possibly be going through. It's hard to relate to other people outside that group sometimes.
And you're right, it's a community that we would never have been part of and didn't, would never want to be part of. But you're right, it is that bond that we all share, that when you've lost a baby, that you're out there running with other parents who have also lost a baby as well. And you're right there, Fraser, we were chatting there about the Great North Run. There is that whole everyone getting together and just sharing that same bond. Though I've not seen you in fancy dress, though, any Fraser.
That'll never be happening.
Are you sure?
Don't fancy the diving suit.
As long as I meet the guy who dresses a rhino, I'm happy.
What about you, Skip? Have you fancied doing any of your challenges in fancy dress yet?
That would affect my aerodynamics on the bike, wouldn't it?
Well, that's true. Well, do you know what? It's been so lovely to chat with you both. I've really enjoyed being able to share some of your incredible experiences. And as always, we thank you both for taking part in the podcast and sharing about your amazing challenges and about Jenna and about Alex. It's such a privilege to hear about both your children. We always ask at the end, what would you say that you were grateful for, to share one thing that you're incredibly grateful for?
I think using running as an outlet, and I think I have to give my wife a shout out for allowing me to go for these long runs on a Sunday morning when I can be disappearing for 3.5 hours.
Yeah, you're taking the words right out of my mouth there. I remember having a conversation with Katie once saying, look, do you mind me doing this? And she said, well, this makes you bearable sometimes, so do it. So yeah, big shout out to Katie, and yeah, she's my inspiration as well. She keeps me going as well.
Oh, that's amazing. Guys, that's so lovely to hear you share both about how Shelley and how Katie are your inspiration. And I have to say, behind every great man, there's always a great woman. So, and thank you so much for being part of our podcast. And Dads absolutely rock. And we thank you for taking part and sharing so much about your experiences. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this podcast today. We thank Fraser and we thank Richard for being part of it. We also thank Shelley and we thank Katie for being the amazing women behind them. If you have been affected by any of these issues today, you can contact Held in Our Hearts at www.heldinourhearts.org.uk, where you can receive support. We also ask if you'd like to take part in any of our challenges that you see, then please contact Tracy at heldinourhearts.org.uk. Thank you for listening.